The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials, and with added visuals that enhance the radio experience. Now, here's host Dom Geneva.
This is Dom Geneva, host of the No Nonsense Roundtable. What you're about to hear is a very special edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. Frank H. Hamlin III, President and CEO of Canandaigua National Bank and Trust, visited my studio along with his executive team. One of them, the well-known Ginny Ryan, happens to have experience in broadcasting, so I asked you to do some of the heavy lifting and be my co-host. Enjoy. Well, welcome everybody to another edition of your No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva, your host, every Saturday here on News Radio Wham 1180. And like I like to remind you, all the past shows are on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. Now today I am delighted to have a co-host on my show, Ginny Ryan. Ginny, welcome to the show once again.
Dom, thank you for having me. This was kind of a surprise. I was just helping set this up, and then you talked me into, I really have never met a microphone I didn't like to talk into, so how could I say no?
Ladies and gentlemen, what I did was I talked Ginny into doing my job for me. Because today on the show, we have Frank Hamlin III, who is the president and CEO of Canandaigua National Bank, which happens to be your boss.
Yeah.
So you don't have to say it like that.
So, you know.
I've had 215 shows, I think, so far, maybe 220, and never have I had anybody here and had them interview their boss.
Uh-oh. This could be career-ending for me, Frank.
This would never be career-ending. I do have to say I'm feeling very, very lucky that Ginny decided to come along and tell our story. And
likewise.
It's been a fantastic journey so far. And I've been in a lot of rooms that otherwise I wouldn't have been in. And so I thank you for that.
Well, I thank you for this opportunity, and I feel the exact same way.
Well, I've been a customer of the Canandaigua Bank for quite a long time, probably 30 years. You know, so I'm a fan. I'm a fan of you guys,
and we appreciate you being a customer with us.
So Ginny, let's start out by telling everybody who doesn't know what you do for the bank now and why you're here.
Well, thank you for asking and inviting us here today. I am Director of Community Engagement. So in that role, I work on our events with our events team. I work on our philanthropy and our communications and social media. So it's 3 different functions. We have a great team, and it's been a lot of fun. As you know, Canandaigua National Bank and Trust is very philanthropic, and they have a robust giving program through contributions and sponsorships. So it's been a lot of fun to tell that story. And oh my gosh, Dom, what a great story it is.
Well, there you go. There's the softball. Go ahead. I mean, first we want to talk about the history of the bank, right?
Please.
Go ahead.
Well, when I have Frank Hamlin here, I'm going to talk about the history of the bank.
No, I wanted you to ask him the question. That's fine.
Okay.
Actually, that's an easy one, so I can do that. Frank, tell us about the bank, and it's been around since 1886.
1887.
Okay,
is when the bank started, and it started it was predominantly in the Ontario County region, and that's where it kind of grew and got established over time. We've been around. Obviously, through that time, we've been through a couple world wars. We've been through the Great Depression. We've been through great recessions. We've been through savings and loans crises and all these other things, and it is what we always manage to stick around when everyone else ends up folding or going away or pulling away from the communities, and so we're very proud of that. We're very proud of our engagement within the community. We're very proud about our ability to help other people succeed. And to provide the education and advice to listen, all boats rise within this community if the community is properly nurtured and supported, and that is our role as a community bank within this community.
Well, the one thing that you said, and I did a little smile to my face, is you tend to stick around, which is to me, that's the most important thing. I mean, you had this thing happen with this bank in California where run on the bank, and I mean, give me a comment about that, because that's not something that we need to worry about with Canandaigua Bank.
That is not something you need to worry about with respect to, frankly, any of the banks in this particular area and region. I think it's really important to understand, in order to understand what happened with Signature and Republic and Silicon Valley banks. It's really important to understand who their customer base was. Here, as a community bank, I mean the title community is the whole point. In a community bank, what you're doing is you're investing in all the businesses within and all the families and all the households within that community. It creates a very, very diversified and stable environment for an institution that is where that is the focus, because you're dealing with the automotive businesses, you're dealing with the doctors, you're dealing with the florists, you're dealing with a very wide array of businesses and people, so that you're not vulnerable to any one particular type of industry or set of circumstances that's going to knock out your entire community. It's a far more stable. In the Silicon Valley context, these were banks, I believe it was Silicon and it was Signature, not Signature. Signature was New York. Silicon and Republic, they were both California-based companies that were heavily focused upon venture capital and the tech startups that they were funding or that they were supporting. And startups are known; they're called startups, and venture capital is involved in startups because probably 1 in 20 actually succeeds, and the rest, don't. So when you're dealing with a concentration of companies and customers in a very kind of specialized environment, if something goes wrong within that environment, you are looking at a potential collapse or a potential, and in this case it was a run. I would suggest that there was a very limited number of customers who had a huge amount of control with respect to all the businesses that this bank was financing. But this amalgamation of venture capital, all these people are talking to each other, and they just went ahead and created their own stir. I would also be very curious to see how many of these people will eventually be prosecuted for shorting the stock.
Well, I guess, it goes back to the things we learned when we were in kindergarten, is putting all your eggs in one basket, I guess. I guess it is, And the other thing is, it seems that the general philosophy of your bank is conservative and consistent. I mean, that seems to be the way you conduct yourselves, and so it's certainly why I do a lot of my banking with you.
I think conservative is a dangerous term.
Okay.
And because that would tend to suggest, not a dangerous term, but I think it's maybe a little misleading. It would tend to suggest that you're not agile. And you're not able to go ahead, and you're frankly not sophisticated. But yes, we are in a situation where that's another huge differentiator between ourselves and these banks that failed. The banks that failed were, I think, anywhere between 20 and 35 years old. Okay, and in that time frame, they had grown to well over 100, even $200 billion in assets. That is an incredible growth rate. When any system grows that quickly, its infrastructure struggles to keep up, to go ahead and provide for safety and soundness issues, regulatory, and just good old fiscal safety and soundness. Whereas, we have always, our focus has been this community.
Right.
Our focus has not been about growing, at double digits year over year into perpetuity. Our focus has been to feed and support our community. So we've had a kind of a modest historical growth of around 6 to 7% year over year for the last 100 years. Mm-hmm. And with that, we are able to make sure that we have structures in place from a risk perspective and from a underwriting perspective. Where when you're not moving at the speed of light, you have the time to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Good point.
And that's what comes down to the kind of the very base stability that we've been able to execute upon for the last, for decades and even a century.
Well, welcome back. We're talking to Frank Hamlin, who is the president and CEO of Canandaigua National Bank. What makes a bank a national bank?
There you go.
It has to do with how it's chartered. So we are technically chartered by the OCC, and so some banks are chartered by the states. In the state, it would be the Department of Financial Services. And so the benefit of being a nationally chartered bank is that we're not constrained with respect to crossing state borders and the like. But the fact is that there's a lot of overlapping supervision, if you will.
So there's some restrictions if you're not a national bank.
There are, and there's some restrictions if you are, because different regulators have a different set of rules and a different set of interpretations, and so there is always a lot of kind of hubbub, if you will, as between the different regulators, and of course DFS considers itself to be a very important regulator, as it is a New York State. New York State is has been historically kind of the hub of finance for the world, especially down in Manhattan, and so it is a big deal. People listen and talk about what the Department of Financial Services is doing or is looking to do, but the fact is, or the benefit is with an OCC charter, we have a lot more. We believe that we have, in some ways, some more flexibility than otherwise. That's why we're considered a national bank.
So, Jenny, let me throw this over to you because you're going to help me with this. So, you have some questions you would ask your boss.
I've been wanting to ask Frank something for a long time.
All right.
Frank, if you were a tree.
Magnolia.
Well, you know what? I've been thinking, magnolia. Yeah. I like that. Wow. We have a lot in common, actually, Frank and I. And it's more recent because we both made major career changes in our lives.
Correct.
I have not always been in public relations. I was on air at Channel 13 for 35 years. And Frank hasn't always been in banking, although his family has been in banking. You are a defense attorney. So why the career change? People want to know.
Why the change? Every decade or so, you have to reinvent yourself. And this was an opportunity to do so. Listen, I loved the law. I really did love the law. And what it comes down to is when you're defending people and when you're trying cases, it is on a case-by-case basis where you're making a large impact in that individual's lives and the people around them. And, that's important, and that felt really good and important. But when there came a time where there was discussions about me joining the bank, my father, who was the CEO before me, he came to me and said, "Well, what's the issue here?" And I said, "Well, you're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing, and I think what I'm doing is very important." And he said, "You can affect positive change within your community over a much broader scale than you'll ever be able to do doing what you're doing now." And that was really the biggest hook. And we do wonderful things within this community, and we are able to touch a lot of people. And just talking on something as basic as the philanthropy that we are able to do. The pandemic hits, we are able to go ahead and shoot money to the food kitchens, to the housing, to the places, and affect large numbers of people and materially help in ways that you wouldn't normally think about that a bank would do. And so that was the compelling reason.
That's a community bank. And may I add, Canandaigua National Bank has more than 700 employees. And in my time here, I've quickly learned that Frank is beloved in the bank. You are by the workforce, and that's not always the case. Yeah. I know that to be true from my previous experience. And he's beloved because he's authentic and passionate, and he truly cares. And when the pandemic hit, the story that everyone in the bank has told me is that Frank held a company-wide Zoom meeting and told everyone that they didn't have to fear they would lose their jobs. That's extraordinary. Yeah. And that's what leaders do, right? They come, they lead, and they give the support that's needed at that moment. And that was what was needed. And that's what people remember today at the bank. It's the culture that is really ingrained in the entire community of people that work there.
So this compels a question. How did the two of you get together? I mean, were you actively looking for somebody, or did you call them up? I mean, how did this connection work? I asked that question when you and Doug were on the show. When's the first time you met? You and Doug Emlich.
Yeah.
It's the same question. We're just recycling the question. I mean, go ahead.
It was a bar, wasn't it?
It was a bar.
It was a late night. And
there was a lot
he
of
was
drinking.
the last guy standing.
There's people shooting. There's a Bronco involved. Yeah. I don't know.
Kind of looks like Doug. I mean, his back was turned to you. You thought he was Embledge.
It was a series of. It is interesting how just life turns out and opportunities arise, and we'd run into each other, and we'd had some conversations about things, and listen, I mean, Jenny had a very successful career that had participated for decades, and it's a scary thing to change careers, and I, for instance, changed my career, and but there are skills that overlap and that you bring to you and bring to the situation, and it was really interesting listening to Jenny kind of talk about what she was. I mean, eventually it evolved into, hey, you know what? I can tell the story of this institution, and I was like, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, and as a marketing guy, what I see sometimes is the place has got great food, it's got great service. It really has that it factor, but there's not enough people coming in the door. Not enough people know about it. Well, you all know I got a tour of the Rotary Sunshine Camp, and my God, what these people do, and it's wonderful. But more people need to know about it. That's sort of the way I feel. I don't want to gush, after the Canandaigua Bank, and you don't give me.
Please go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
Don't hold back.
Well, no. If you started to give me free samples, I would take the free samples of cash if you would like to do that. But that's not
only on Wednesdays.
Only on Wednesdays, yeah. But no, I've been dealing with you for a long time, both when I had the car dealership and my personal stuff. So, but we have some executives that are sitting in the
green room,
the No Nonsense Roundtable Roadshow studio there, with the view of the stream and everything, and we're going to have them come on.
Great folks.
So why don't you tell us who we're going to be having on the show next before Frank wraps this up for us at the end? We're
going to have Karen Serenas, and she heads our retail operation. She's been there 25 years. First female executive, she shared with me recently. Yep. She's got a great story, and she is really, I think, the force behind the customer service that you receive when you walk in the door at a branch. Am I correct in saying that?
No, you're absolutely right. She has set the tone for for this institution and the people that we have within it for decades. And she was one of the, when I first came in, started swinging and climbing this cliff, trying to figure out how a bank runs and what my role was within it. She was one of the first people who gave it to me very straight. as you will probably pick up from talking with her. And so I quickly learned that this was an individual who was highly intelligent, highly lots of energy, but and this was very important to me. She told me where it was. There was no.
Oh, you need that.
There was no.
Yeah.
I mean, she was nice about it. I mean, she wasn't mean, but she was direct, and right there, that is what you need.
Absolutely.
And when you're trying to figure out this thing called life, and so I mean, she was my first executive that I had brought up to the executive. Very much because she gives it to you straight. She tells you exactly where it is. She lives and breathes, and the values that go into attracting the people that make this thing run so well.
Well, I've told you a story about a fellow we have here. And should I mention his name?
Sure.
Aaron Gillette.
Yeah.
Who works in your branch here at Honey Falls, and he called me up one day. And there was one of these scams. And to make a long story short, he calls me up and he says, "Dom, this doesn't sound like you." And wow, and that is exactly right. He saved my tail because he knew me, and the transaction doesn't sound like something I would do. I mean, you don't get that with an online bank.
No, you're not going to get that with an online bank. And it is about having those relationships, and it is. This is can be a very complex business, but honestly, it's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. It is pretty simple. It's meeting people, understanding people, trying to educate and help people obtain their goals. And when you do that, you get to know them.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Yep.
And you're not going to get that with an internet bank.
And who else do we have coming on?
Chris Baker, president of CMB Mortgage Company. And then we have Kathy Ambridge, who leads our consumer lending in the auto business, something you know something about.
Yes,
and they've got a wealth of information. So I'm really excited for you to speak with them and learn more about what we do.
Yeah.
And why we do it so well.
Yes, we'll have those segments, and we'll start off right now.
All right.
Well, Ginny, we said that you're going to do most of my job for me. So,
what is the pay rate, by the way? I had to take a pay cut when I went to the bank.
The same thing I'm getting paid. Which is nothing. So go ahead and introduce our next participant, guest, or whatever you want to say.
She is perfect for a show called the No Nonsense Roundtable. Okay. Her name is Karen Serenas. And when I think of no nonsense, Frank, help me here. I think of Karen Serenas because she gives it to you straight. She's passionate, and she is the reason why you get great customer service when you come into any of the 25 branches at Canandaigua National Bank and Trust.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, Karen Serenas.
Wow. Listen, I would love to take credit for all the good customer service, but I will tell you that it's our people. Mm-hmm. They are all passionate. They are all focused. And we as a bank live our motto of customer centric, and we all get it. And very proud to be associated.
You used an expression there that I love because I think people either get it or they don't get it. I have an expression, not everybody who plays the piano can make music. And it has to do with more of a philosophy than just training, right?
Oh, I believe so. I think at the bank, George Hamlin was our president prior to Frank for 30 years. And he had a very simple philosophy that you treat your employees well, mm-hmm. and they will turn around and treat the customers well. And that's a pretty simple premise. Not a lot of companies get it. We get it. Our employees love to come to work. We have a great culture. They love each other. It's kind of a family feel, and that is certainly felt by our customers time and time again. They attest to that.
And the thing I think a lot of people don't know or realize is that it's basically banking is basically like a commodity. I mean, the difference between you using one bank for your savings, loans, whatever, it has to do with the experience. I mean, the difference in rate is, or whatever, is just so small or minute or whatever. That's really not what is in people's minds.
Absolutely. I agree with that. The service aspect, I think today that's rare.
Right.
Whether you go into a retail store, you will know in your head, I know I have in my head, there's a store that still does customer service, still cares about you when you walk in, and there's stores that do not. We certainly are a bank that cares about you when you walk in that door, and our customers feel it. The reason that we have exploded really in the Rochester market is because people are leaving other banks to come to us. Because when you walk in the door, you feel the difference at any of our branches. I remember I was at our Pittsford office years ago, and somebody walked in, and that's in a historic home in the village of Pittsford. And they walked in, and they looked around, and they looked at me, and they said, "Is this a bank?" I said, "Why? Does it not feel like a bank to you?" And he said, "No." I said, "Oh, well, then we hit our mark."
That's right.
We hit our mark. And, come on in and have a seat. We have seats at our teller window. We don't herd you in behind a line and make you stand there while we're sitting. Everybody's relaxed, and we know our customers. We make a point of knowing our customers, and it works.
Yeah, when I go into your branch here at High Falls, it's sort of like Cheers. Everybody knows. I don't know if I'm Norm or Cliff Clavin to them. I mean, one or the other, but you feel that connection. And the thing is that I've called the branch manager, Steve Benz. We're going to mention as many people. But I'll text them. I'll text them and say, "Hey, I got a concern about this or the other." It's right back to me. I mean, again, you don't get that on an online bank. So, do you do a lot of training for this, or is it the people? Probably pretty much the people you hire, right?
Oh, it certainly is the people we hire. It's I actually talk to every teller class. Before they go out in the branch, I want them to know me. I want them to know my expectations. I feel that's fair. You should know the rules before you start the game. And I congratulate them for being hired because someone in some interview recognized a piece that said they can represent us well. And, kudos to them. And that's the way we start.
I think it's really important to note though, and Karen is very good at reinforcing this. The people on the front line, the tellers. This is not in this day and age. This is not your grandparents' teller. These individuals are very highly trained. There is a lot of information that they are taught. There's a lot of things they have to be aware about, and it is a constant, a constant training process. So a lot of effort goes into that, and these people are highly intelligent, very engaging people that are dealing with one of the hardest topics to deal with out there. I mean, and it's relationships is one, and money is another, and they're dealing with very sensitive information. They take it very seriously, but I can tell you for one, kind of going back to what was said before in terms of it is the people, it's the type of people that we hire, and it's very easy to kind of get lost from where I sit in the hierarchy or whatever you want to call it here, but if you ever need your cup filled, is you go back into the branches and you go back and talk with all the people, and they fill your cup. I mean, they're funny, they're engaging, and they're smart. And so it really is. Karen's really created a fantastic network of people, and it is not by accident.
No, we're not lucky. We're too consistent to be lucky.
I love that line.
Love that too.
Isn't that a great line?
Yeah, we're doing. I love that. I'm going to have to use that on my book. So, Karen, thank you for coming in. Who do we have next?
We have Chris Baker coming up next, president of Canandaigua National Bank and Trust Mortgage Company.
Ah, there you go. And let's open the door and get him in.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
So, Jenny, do me a favor and introduce our next participant.
I would be honored. Chris Baker is president of Canandaigua National Bank and Trust Mortgage Company. He's been with CNB for 18 years and is a veteran in the industry as well. Chris, everyone's talking about the housing market in Rochester. Yeah. You know, we were always steady Eddie, right? And now it's tight. It's hard to get a house.
Yep. Yeah, the market is a little soft right now. Lack of inventory is kind of what you hear about in the news. It's not that there's a total lack of houses for sale, because houses hit the market, but they sell quickly. They sell within 48, 72 hours. They're just not hitting the inventory, so they don't sit around. That's both good and bad, right? Typical housing stock in this market is about 6 months on the market. We're less than a month right now, and it's just it's tough.
Even with interest rates going up, huh?
Yes.
Have you seen anything like this before in your career, 30 years?
Yeah, I know. I think back, and I know we've had ups and downs in that time period, but never anything quite like this. And for this length of time, it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah. How long will it take to get out of this?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think that I think people are staying in their homes longer, mainly because they're probably locked into a low interest rate. Mm-hmm. We were talking about this a little earlier. So COVID hit 3 years ago. At the exact same time, interest rates took a dive for an all-time low. So for us, it was kind of the perfect storm. As we were going out to work remotely. An entire staff of 54 people in our office, interest rates were at an all-time low, and business just shot through the roof. And that happened. That stayed pretty consistent for 2 years. Even up until going into the third year last year was a really pretty strong year for us. Mm-hmm. Refinances kind of went away because interest rates went up. But the purchase money still, the purchase money market's still pretty vibrant here in Rochester. It's not dead. It's just slower.
But you've also seen, the prices of houses keep on going up, even though the interest rates are going up, right?
That's true too. Yep.
That's kind of weird.
Well, it is. I think part of it is artificial, because people are bidding higher on houses than they would have with a full inventory, right? So it's supply and demand. Less inventory means you've got to get that house. They have more people bidding on it. Multiple bids on houses, pretty much just about everything that hits the market.
What's the most important thing people need to know when they're applying for a mortgage?
The most important thing they need to do is to get pre-approved and see where they qualify. I think that if you do that and you find out where you really sit, you know the market, and you can go in better prepared.
So what's a young person to do? I know my daughter was just in the market. It was very challenging. What's your advice?
I think advice is make sure your credit is in line. Okay, have good credit. Get pre-qualified. You've got to know where you qualify. And it's not just how much do you qualify for, where do you qualify, or where do you want to qualify? Because sometimes people don't want to spend as much as they qualify for, right? So you need to figure out where your best situation is for housing, and then just go unprepared. I think pre-qualification, pre-approval is essential.
Do you recommend foregoing that inspection? I know it's almost, I know it's a thing now, but it's scary.
A lot of realtors will probably kill me for saying this. I don't recommend it personally. I don't. I sold real estate before I got into mortgage banking, and it was almost unheard of to not have a home inspection. And over the years, it's just been the way it is, right? If you don't have a home inspection, you just don't know what you're purchasing. But the problem is when you've got multiple offers, you've got to shave things, and that's one of the first things to go is the inspection.
Well, I likened this one day to somebody gave me that question, and I said, this is like you're going to go across the street at 2 o'clock in the morning on Route 5 and 20 in Avon, and blindfolded. Now you're probably not going to get hit by a car,
Right.
but if you do, it's going to be bad.
That is true. Yeah.
So, you need some type of inspection. But the problem with that is that I think, and you can comment on this, sometimes people get their egos involved in it. I mean, it's going to be a little bit off. The dishwasher is a little bit, don't get into an argument with somebody over something that doesn't really matter. But if the foundation is cracked,
But that's the risk you run, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that's the whole point of the inspection, is to make sure you know what you're purchasing.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do an inspection, just understand you don't know what you're purchasing.
right?
You just don't.
Right? And it's too big of you can't return houses.
That is correct. Yes.
That's right.
Fascinating conversation, I think, Chris. And we're all going to be watching this because as the market goes, right, in our community, so we all go. Our futures are really hooked together in one. So
that's
it's
true.
an important line of business for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well,
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
All right, coming up next, Kathy Amberge. She leads something that you're familiar with, Don, auto lending business.
Auto lending. That's right up my alley. Okay. Ginny, there you go.
All right, I want to introduce Kathy Amberge, who's been waiting patiently in the wings. She leads our consumer lending division, and this is in your wheelhouse, Dom, because of course this involves auto loans.
Right.
If you're talking about consumer lending,
Sure.
the majority has to be the auto loans, right?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. The portfolio consists primarily of indirect, which would be the dealer loans.
Okay, so indirect, to people that don't know what indirect means, that means that you have the dealer fill out the paperwork. It goes to Canandaigua Bank. You make your payment to Canandaigua Bank, but the paperwork is done at the dealership, not at the branch.
Correct.
Okay, that's the difference.
That's the difference. Yes.
That's very convenient.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's great service. Like I said, it makes up the majority of our portfolio. Usually we're number 1 or 2 for the month in lending and car loans. So it's a big part of our portfolio.
So what makes you number 1 and number 2? Why are you so popular?
Over the years, we work with the dealerships, and in today's world, you got a lot of automation, and automation's great, but sometimes it's not so great because, as you know, with credit and your experience in dealerships, every credit has a story. So, we're able to take a look at it, and, we use a live eye for most of our underwriting. We do some automation, but truly we are not automated as far as our underwriter. I've got a full underwriting team.
What I always felt, and I don't know if this is legitimate or not, okay, but what I would see with Canandaigua Bank is that you understand this market. If somebody's making $80,000 a year and they have a $200,000 house in the Rochester area, they're doing okay.
Right.
If you have an $80,000 job and you have a $200,000 house in Nassau County, you're getting food stamps.
Yeah, right. Yep.
You can't handle that payment.
Exactly. And in today's times, you're seeing a lot of that because there's variables within the market that is really, really affecting the payments. So you've got, car prices are inflated, interest rates are going up, and we have inflation. So we've got all these factors coming together, and people are trying to fit into a payment or have fit into a payment that they may or may not be able to make at this time because of the inflation. So it's very, very important when you're underwriting that you're looking at all the factors and you're making sure that you're doing well by the customer.
Well, I was taught the 4 C's of credit. Do you remember the 4 C's of credit?
Yeah, the basics. Yeah.
So, do you want to articulate those, or do you want me to articulate the 4 C's?
You could certainly name them off, but I'll tell you the most important one.
Yeah.
Well, I saw this at the car dealerships that at one time, it was back in the day, with the financial crisis, people got approved for loans that didn't have the capacity to pay the loan.
Right.
So it was your credit history, It was your collateral. It was, they call it character.
Yep.
Do you change
Most
your job?
important one.
Right. And
Really?
and your capacity.
Yeah.
And people would come into the dealership and say, oh, my car payment is, blah, blah, blah. And your car payment for this loan is now twice the car that you used to have, and you don't have the capacity to pay that back.
Right. And, when I say the most important one is character, what I mean by that is if you have someone that, and you can see it by their credit report, right? They make the payment on time. It's consistent. That person, no matter what happens in their life, is going to pay that loan.
Right.
And you know it, so character comes into the picture big when you're underwriting. And you can't see that unless a human eye is looking at it.
No, I had a customer once ask me, your payment would be, $350 a month, ma'am. And she goes, well, how much would that be with a late payment?
Let me get back to something you just said.
Sure.
Because in my short time at CMB, I think I've realized, or I've come to learn, that the differentiator is our ability to work with people,
Right.
to recognize character, because they're more than a name on an application.
Yep.
And how does that make a difference, do you both think, Frank and Kathy, as a customer?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story that happened. So I happened to be looking at this one particular deal that the car dealer wanted done, and he called me because the system automatically declined it. And he called me up, and I took a look at it, and I saw this perfect credit. And then there was this little incident. And then it came back, and I said to him, put this person there. I want to talk to him. And, come to find out, it was a situation in which she got bad advice. And she was told to not pay, to go to, you hear all the time on the radio, you don't have to pay your credit cards in full, we'll help you. She got roped into one of those, and they told, she's been making the payment, of course, to the company, and the company has to let everything go delinquent before they could actually start to settle with the credit card companies. So she got roped into it, and she thought that was a good thing to do. And so we were able to do the car loan for her. She certainly had the character. She just got really bad advice. And then, we had to go to the branch, and we continued to work with her, and we got her out of that situation. But, that's something that we do. We take that extra step, and you can't do that if you don't have human eyes looking at stuff.
Wow, what did that make you feel like at the end of the day?
It's why I do what I do. It's what's motivated me for all the years that I've been in banking, 26 years with CNB. It's why I get up in the morning.
And Frank, let me tie this into you, because the guy who felt that you were making a difference as a defense attorney when your dad said you could make a difference at a bank, you hear that story. What do you think? How do you feel?
Well, I really do think that it is, it goes to the heart of what it means to be, a positive contributor to the community. The fact is, people do, get bad advice. People do get themselves into trouble. But a big part of our job is to provide education and advice, and give. You don't just say no. You say no, but. Or no, and here's how you can go ahead, or this is how we might be able to restructure, or these are the things that we can do to go ahead and put you into a better position so that we can get to yes. So, and that's exactly what Kathy's talking about here.
Well,
I love that, Kathy.
I've seen that in my own dealings with CNB, is that you can talk to somebody. It's math and logic. You can talk to somebody about a loan. We were talking before the show about an experience I had with another bank. But you can talk to the bank and say math and logic, this, and this, and you will listen. And you, as you said, I think it was off air. You said then your people have the authority to act on that, which is something I value, because being a no nonsense car dealer, no nonsense for me went both ways. You know, I don't want somebody trying to drain every dime they can out of me. And I'm not going to drain every dime I can out of somebody else. You know, that's the relationship that I want. And that's the difference when you're talking about something that's a commodity like money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I laud you for thinking about that, though. You know, it's not just about the car, it's about the people you're getting in that car.
Exactly.
Because a car isn't really a car. A car is your transportation, it's your way to work. I mean, it's just not, it's just not a car.
Yeah. Well,
you have to have a car.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you
definitely
teach that to people in your department?
You know, I'm blessed in the fact that I have a very experienced underwriting team. You know, another thing that we bring to the table, I think that, you know, in all, I have underwriters that have been there 30 plus years. And I'd say my shortest time span that someone's been underwriting is about 10. So, you know, I have a very, very experienced team. And they're wonderful, you know, and the greatest compliment we get is when a customer of ours goes into the car dealer and says, I want my loan through CNB.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Well, you're a great teacher, Kathy. You should be really proud of that fact, Frank. I mean, thank you. Wow. That could be an anonymous transaction in a lot of other places, but it's not.
No.
I think that's remarkable.
Yeah, it isn't. You know, even the loans that end up declined, we'll take second look at. Every single day, one of my underwriters goes in and he looks at the declines and says, is there some of these we can turn around? Because, again, you've got a system looking at something, and there's more to the story than the credit score. Other factors go into it.
Yep.
Well said.
You know your customers.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you.
We're glad you're a customer.
well, not for car loans. I don't have. Well, they're paid off. So I mean, sorry to
you
disappoint.
know somebody.
Sorry to disappoint you. My cars are paid off. So.
But if you ever want a new car and get a really big loan, you know where to go.
That's right. Okay, well, let's get
this
back.
Has been fun.
Well, let's wrap this up and get back to Frank. Do you have any questions you'd like to about your maybe your promotions or your raises? Now that you have him here in the studio and we have live mics, I mean, is there anything that you want to ask him?
I think we've covered our bases here. It's been great. And I feel so fortunate, and I mean that sincerely, to have made this transition. I knew a little bit about the bank, but not a lot. But the good thing is sometimes when you don't know a lot, you know, you don't often learn the good stuff, but everything I've learned has been so positive. The deeper I go, I mean, it's true. What people say about the bank, it's true. And that's not always the case when you go somewhere. You see the other side of it, the underside of it. But, you know, they live the brand every day.
Well, there are institutions and businesses that have woven their way into the fabric of Rochester in this area. And certainly Canandaigua National Bank is one of those things I talk about all the time. You have Eastman Theater, you have Wegmans, you have the Red Wings, and you have woven your way into the community. And it's evidenced by what you do. And I'm a fan. I mean,
well, thank you. And you know what?
I'm still looking for the free samples, but I'm a fan.
Of course. But it's been a lot. But the important thing is it's been a lot of fun to do so. It's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of solutions. It's a lot of working with cool people, trying to build things and do things that are creative and neat. And to be able to play a role in that is right down to the center of what it is to be a community bank. And so it's a very fulfilling exercise, and I feel very blessed to have all these people around me who share that vision. So,
well, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you coming down to the studios on this beautiful morning, and Ginny, thank you for co-hosting.
It was an honor. Thank you for this opportunity.
I'm going to have to call you in again to do this.
Absolutely.
Again, maybe with some other organization or person and whatever. And next time I'll pay you. I'll pay you
694
double.
more people from Canandaigua National Bank we can bring in.
You got to keep on going, my friend.
All right, everybody. Next week, 10 o'clock, right here on News Radio WHAM 1180. It's the No Nonsense Roundtable.
Thanks for listening. Tune in 10 a.m. Saturdays on News Radio WHAM 1180 or stream at wham1180.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.